Hello, and thank you for clicking on my video. If you like the content I'm putting out, please subscribe. That really helps me out. And let's get started. So today's topic is basically getting you some idea of how to get into AI slash machine learning slash data science field, especially if you're a fresh graduate. So first of all, the way to into get your foot in the door for AI jobs is really through either a data analyst job or a data engineer job, depending on your degree and knowledge level. For a data analyst job, you probably don't necessarily need a bachelor's degree. For a fresh graduate, especially if you have a math degree or an engineering degree of any kind, data engineer is probably your best bet. Because it requires some skills that you already have, and it doesn't really undersell your skills when you work as a data analyst. Uh, in terms of salary, data analyst is probably at the low end, like 60 to 80. Where I live in LA, data engineer is probably somewhere between 80 to 130, $140,000 a year base salary. And data scientist, you probably need a master's degree anyway, at the very least. And, and because of that, those jobs start at 150 and go all the way up. So really, if you're a fresh graduate, your best bet is to get into a data engineer role if you can. So today, that's what I'm going to talk about. So what I did is I went into LinkedIn and searched for data engineer jobs, 25 of them, and took a note of all the keywords in the qualification sections of the job descriptions, and then sorted them out. And that gave me a good idea of what skills are required. And I sorted them here for you, so you can you can take a look and see which ones are the most important skills to have. Just so you know, in this video and in the slides, I have included all the ones that I found. That way, at least you have a full list of all the skills that could possibly be needed and how they rank in importance. So you have the list here if you need it. But anyway, let's start at the top. SQL and SQL queries, that came up 34 times, even though I searched only 25 job descriptions. And by the way, I excluded any job that had senior or staff or principal or team lead or anything like that. These are just normal data engineer roles. Typically, what I saw in those job descriptions is you need somewhere between 0 to 3 years of experience. Okay, so SQL is pretty obvious. You really have to be good with SQL queries and running SQL against the data that you have. And no surprise, the next one in the list is databases. So you have to know your databases, especially MySQL, Postgres, Cloud SQL, that kind of thing. You don't have to be expert in all of them by any means. You just have to know at least one database. Most common is probably MySQL, but you do have to know your SQL and your databases. Next thing you need to know is Python. Python is the most common language for data science and machine learning. So you really have to know that. You don't have to be an expert, but you do have to know it. Cloud, nowadays everything is in the cloud. Therefore, as you can see, cloud and AWS and Azure, and in the next page, you will see Google Cloud shows up as well. So you really have to know, one, how to use the cloud, and also all the managed tools clouds already give you for doing your databases, your SQL queries, your data storage, your data warehousing. Each of these cloud providers like AWS, Google, and Azure has those tools. You should pick one. If you're going for a big company, you should pick AWS. If you're going for a small company, which is more common, by the way, and more likely to hire you, in which case you really should be focusing on Google Cloud. Anyway, at any rate, you have to know cloud. As you can see, next to SQL and databases, you have Python and then cloud. Programming and development, that goes with Python. So basically, you have to know how to code. Again, you don't have to be an expert, but you do have to know how to code. ETL is probably the most domain-specific knowledge here you need, right? ETL stands for, well, I forgot what E stands for, but anyway, the idea, T is for transformation, and L is for, oh, I forgot what, anyway, it doesn't matter. What it is a data pipeline. So in your company, you're going to have a huge data sets and multiple data sets. You have to know if as new data comes in, you have to know how to set up a pipeline so that those data get cleaned up and processed automatically through the tools. As you can see, this is the next thing that you might create or manage, so that you don't have to manually do this data processing. You still have to do the science part at the very end of it, and come up with conclusions, but you don't have to manually fiddle with the data as they come in. So these ETL is basically are data pipelines that you're going to have to create and learn how to do to process your data to the point where a human is needed to analyze them. You will need to know how to create different tools for data management. Um, some of them you can get it from the cloud managed tools, but in either way, one way or another, you have to have tools that you're going to use and other people are going to use that you create. Azure is just it is Microsoft's cloud service, so that just goes with cloud. Data pipeline we just talked about, that's what ETL is. Big data is basically data where you have data in terabytes and petabytes, and not just a small little relational database. So you have to know how to deal with big data. So as you can see, we've already talked about what 3, maybe 10 or so top skills that you need. You don't have to know everything for your first job, but this gives you some idea about what things to learn for your first job as a data engineer fresh out of college. So let's take a quick look at the other list. You have data warehousing. We already talked about that basically a little bit. So basically, this is where you take the data that comes in, process it, and put it away in a smaller format or process format so that you can go and then run queries against it. Google Cloud we talked about. Relational databases like MySQL and SQL. Data model is basically a visualization of data that you already have. So basically making diagrams of the schemas and relationship between tables and whatnot. You have to know how to model the data so other people have an easier view into the data. I'm not going to go over all the little lists because that will take an hour or two, but you have the list here in case you were curious about what other thing you need to learn, although they're not as important as these skill sets. So again, to summarize, SQL, database, Python, cloud, and some kind of tooling for processing data, otherwise called ETL. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.